The Trickster-Poet speaks out. Well, that is the theme and title of this edition of Poetry, Passion, and Pleasure podcast with your host, Dale Byron. This is the place, as you know, where we work with poetry in both traditional and non traditional ways to help us in our everyday lives. I don't remember exactly when I first heard the famous Albert Einstein quote about we will not be able to resolve or address or solve, certainly, the problems, the predicaments that were created at another level of thinking. In other words, we've got to actually change the perspectives, the level of thinking that created the challenges and predicaments and problems if we're going to be able to address them. So I thought today, one of the themes of this podcast has been that logical, linear, strategic thinking alone, it's not that it's not important, but that logical, linear thinking alone will not resolve or does not have the capacity to help us resolve the thorniest issues within our modern world. And it's all very important, but without the heart, without the imaginative, without the emotive, without the more holistic or whole part of us, head and heart, we won't resolve these major challenges. And I want to add the idea today that if we that not only it's connecting head and heart, it's having our perspectives shifted and changed per Albert Einstein as being so important in helping us meet these political, social, and particularly ecological challenges that we are facing. And again, I was thinking to myself that we need, of course, as we've said many times, both head and heart together. However, sometimes in order to engage and integrate both the head and the heart, we need the tools, techniques, and temperament of the trickster. And now we're getting into the theme of today. And I'm calling this a special kind of trickster, which is the Trickster-Poet. So the note I made is can you become a creative disruptor, a pattern interrupter? Can we shapeshift? Can we be embracers of complexity? Can we reimagine the relationship that we are having with ourselves, with others, and with nature, or the great other, as I say? Can we become embracers of uncertainty? This seems so important. And the poetic tradition has much to say about becoming more sanguine, more comfortable with uncertainty. And I was thinking also along the line of our theme that on some level, every great poem challenges norms, disrupts the ordinary, invites the listener to see the world through a different lens. So, in some ways, as I was thinking about this, every good poet is a trickster poet and is stepping into that wonderful, needed role of helping us see the world in fresh, different ways. I said, this is a kind of trickster energy offering us this fresh perspective on life's complexities, dilemmas, and absurdities. Have you noticed? So here we're going to celebrate the power of poetic trickery today. And I thought we would jump right in with a poem. This is a poem by a poet that's new to me. Her name is Jenny Davis, and this is a very short poem from a collection called The Trickster Academy, again by Jenny Davis. And the title of this poem is Just What Kind of Trickster Are You? The title is just, What Kind of Trickster Are You? And the poem goes like this. Well, well, which are you? A finger or a thumb? Well, which are you? A finger or a thumb? I, I am a hand. I am a hand, an arm reaching, a body, a community across generations. I am the cosmos translucent. Okay, I'll put you down for the thumb then. um, Trickster poem indeed. Which immediately, one of the things that the trickster does for us, even in difficult, dire situations. And look around politically, socially, and ecologically, the ecological pressure that is being placed on every culture across the earth at some level. We are in some difficult waters. What's the metaphor we want to use? Troubled times, white waters. That's whitewater rafting is what we're doing. And that's a very common, almost cliched metaphor. But I love the trickster poet. One of the first things the trickster poet does is look at it this way, and in a surprising way. And often, like this poem, it just sort of has us not take ourselves so seriously. So I love this. Again, very short poem. Just what kind of trickster are you is the title. And the poet says, well, or the protagonist in the poem starts out, well, which are you? Which are you? A finger or a thumb? I, I am a hand, an arm reaching, a body, a community across generations. I am the cosmos translucent. Okay, I'll put you down for thumb then. Oh, thank you, Jenny Davis, for that wonderful example to me of our kickoff trickster poem. So let's keep going now. A trickster poem, again, in some ways, it's good poetry because the trickster is interrupting, is disrupting, is shifting, is shape shifting, is helping us see the world differently. So let's switch gears here with Joy Harjo. And I've talked about Joy Harjo is an American poet, a musician, playwright, author. She served as the 23rd U.S. Poet Laureate. She has got tremendous talent. And the important thing, I think, for this poem is that, pardon me, she was the first Native American to hold the honor of Poet Laureate. Okay, this poem is called Remember, Remember by Joy Harjo. Remember the sky that you were born under. Know each of the stars' stories. Remember the moon. Know who she is. Remember the sun's birth at dawn. That is the strongest point of view. Remember sundown and the giving away tonight. Remember your birth. Remember your birth, how your mother struggled to give you form and breath. You are evidence. You are evidence of her life and her mother's and hers. Remember your father. He is your life also. Remember the earth whose skin you are. Remember the earth whose skin you are. Red earth, black earth, yellow earth, white earth, brown earth. We are earth. Remember the plants, trees, animal life, who all have their tribes, their families, their histories too. Talk to them. Listen to them. They are alive poems. They are alive poems. Remember the wind. Remember her voice. She knows the origin of this universe. Remember, you are all people, and all people are you. Remember, you are this universe. Remember, you are this universe, and this universe is you. Remember, all is in motion, is growing, is you. Remember, language comes from this. Remember, the dance. Language is that life is. Remember. Remember, you are this universe, and this universe is you. Remember, all is in motion, is growing, is you. Remember, language comes from this. Remember, the dance. Language is that life is. Remember. Well, that's Joy Harjo, I think, stepping into her role as an amazing, talented, skillful poet. And also with this poem in particular, which I think steps into her Native American, her indigenous role as a human being, as a poet, stepping in and talking as though she's giving some wise advice to a younger person in the same tradition. And I would say that she is being very much a trickster poet in the best sense of that term, with, as we say, an irreducible level of rascality, um, you know, I often think, if we think of that word, one of the first jobs of the good poem is to help remember us. Think of that word, remember us, in a different way. And the trickster poet wants to disrupt the old ways that we've been remembering ourselves and help us put ourselves together in a new, fresh way. You know, I found a quote that I thought was very interesting. It's by a guy by the name of Jim Robbins. And he says, from California to Maine, land is being given back to Native American tribes who are committing to managing it for conservation. Some tribes are using traditional knowledge, from how to support wildlife to the use of prescribed fires to protect their ancestral grounds. Kind of a news item, which is so interesting because it begins to say that maybe when we look at the time frame of only a couple of 100 years, that maybe we're looking at a far too short a time frame. Maybe the wisdom of Native Americans, maybe the wisdom of these Native American tribes is coming back to us as we face more and more ecological tragedy. Maybe that wisdom is coming back to us in new, fresh ways that we are seeing, as the trickster poet says, that we are seeing and now experiencing and now living our lives differently in terms of giving back control of the land to those who are wise enough to steward that land. Second poem today in the trickster poet tradition, as we're celebrating and talking about today. This poem is called My Superpower is Worrying. My superpower is worrying. Let's get into the poem and then we'll talk about what I think makes it a trickster poet poem. My superpower is worrying. Poem goes like this: destruction, destruction, death, despair, destruction, death, despair Have I made myself clear? Do you know the dance steps for that awful tune called the catastrophic shuffle? I worry. I worry about our rising tensions and nuclear war a lot. I worry about storms, plastic, nanoparticles, rising seas. I worry for the bees, bears, air pollution, forever chemicals. I worry about burning forests, mountains, wet bulb events. Look back. Look back. Shame is gaining ground. Look back. Shame is gaining ground. Look ahead. Trust limps, has a badly broken leg. Did faith leave us a forwarding address? No? Okay. Then who will win that democracy is in the balance election that is coming up next Tuesday, or maybe the following Tuesday after that? What if any of these critical items get stolen? What if any of these critical items get stolen? My credit debit card, my electric bike, my cell phone, car, identity, my latest poetry, manuscript? Okay, well, yeah, that last item getting stolen doesn't really worry even me that much. What if any of these critical items get stolen? My credit debit card, my electric bike, my cell phone, car, identity, my latest poetry manuscript? Okay, well, yeah. That last item getting stolen doesn't really worry even me that much. Well, the that's a poem. That poem, "My Superpower is Worrying," is one that I wrote recently in thinking about this whole notion of how we take ourselves so seriously sometimes, and how we need to back away from taking ourselves so seriously. And I'm including poetry in this case. Poetry is incredibly powerful. Poetry has much to add to our lives. Poetry helps us connect head and heart. The poems help us change our story. Poems are good stories without the boring parts. Poems are all those things. And yet, we can't take ourselves, nor even our poems, that seriously. We have to hold it all very lightly. And when I talk about someone stealing my latest poetry manuscript, well, I'm not really worried about that. Although, as I've said in my work with poetry over these many years, I'm doing my best to change that so that when you go to the library, you're going to see the poetry section is vacant because everybody has rushed to check out all the books of poetry. Um, I said one of the notes I made is along these lines: trickster poets use humor, they poke fun at themselves. Am I worried about the things in this poem I wrote? You bet. Does worry help? Well, yes and no. A certain amount of worry means we're focused on something, although even the term worry means that we are kind of over focused on something. And quite honestly, most of the time when we're worried, if we think about that term in its pejorative as we normally use it, I'm very worried, is that it makes us not very effective. Um, and uh, and also the note I made is, does worry mean, if I'm worried, does that mean I'm off the hook for even trying to be helpful to myself or to others or to the earth? No, no, it doesn't. That's one of the big points. If all we do is worry and worry and worry, and will we be any good to ourselves and others? Well, not much, because uh, in my work with my friend and colleague and many others at the Context Institute, and who keeper of the flame on a program called Bright Future Now, they talk about this optimal zone self, wonderful way of thinking about the optimal zone and how to get there and how to return there. Well, this is kind of the territory we're talking about, because when we're worried, you know, and kind of obsessing about that worry, which is not so hard to do sometimes, but it means that we're not in our optimal zone. So it means we're not enjoying our life on one level, but it also means, very importantly, that we're probably, very likely, not being very effective in the world. Only the centered, optimal zone version of ourselves will have a chance at being happy, at being of service, and of being effective. Okay, well, let's keep on cooking. Now, remember, the trickster poet speaks out. That's our theme today, and how we not only need to connect head and heart, but we also sometimes need to shift our perspective, shift our logical linear minds, so that when we bring it together with our more emotive, imaginative, intuitive heart space, heart energy, that we are able to work with difficult things. Again, back to Einstein, we are now at a different level of thinking and feeling than when the challenges, problems, and predicaments were created. And if we believe Einstein, then we must have ways to do that. We must have trickster poets in our midst to help us see the world differently, to help bring us back to our centered, optimal zone selves. Okay, let's keep cooking. We got a poem by the great, amazing poet Rita Dove. It's called Canary. And the little byline is, "For Michael S. Harper," is what Rita Dove said of this poem, dedicated to. So it goes like this. The first line, short poem. Billie Holiday's burned voice, Billie Holiday's burned voice had as many shadows as lights. Now let's just step out of the poem for a minute. What an image that is. Now, of course, Billie Holiday was the amazing, and in many ways tragic, the way she was hounded and persecuted. But Billie Holiday was the incredible Black jazz singer, talented beyond belief. And Rita Dove is using some imagery, which is so, to me, so powerful. Again, the poem starts out this way. Billie Holiday's burned voice had as many shadows as lights, a mournful candelabra against a sleek piano. The gardenia, her signature under that ruined face. Now you're cooking, drummer to bass, magic spoon, magic needle. Take all day if you have to with your mirror and your bracelet of song. And your bracelet of song. Fact is, the invention of women under siege has been to sharpen love in the service of myth. If you can't be free, be a mystery. Fact is, the invention of women under siege, has been to sharpen love in the service of myth. If you can't be free, be a mystery. Well, for me, Rita Dove has just stepped into this trickster poet role in a big way. I was thinking to myself, we could talk about the bitter injustice of racism, and we should. We could talk about the bitter injustice of racism and should. We could point out all the ways that prejudice has reduced or eliminated the agency of certain human beings, and it has. We could also talk about the role of despair in addiction, mentioned in this poem. The magic needle, the magic spoon. So we could talk about the role of despair in addiction, but we can also lift all of it up. We can also use language, poetic language, trickster poetic language, to lift it all up. We can celebrate the power of women under siege, even under siege. Yeah, we can do all that. Okay, well, as I like to say, we're headed for the barn with this next poem. This is our last poem. And remember, is just keep, talking about the soil we are in today, or the pickle juice we're marinating in today, which is the question about the role of the trickster poet in helping us do what Albert Einstein, helping us do several things, but what Albert Einstein said that we need to do, we need to, if we're going to address the major challenges, predicaments, problems that we have, that we've got to do so only from the perspective of a different level of thinking than those problems, predicaments, challenges were created. And I really believe this is true. And if you believe it's true, if we all believe it's true, then what are we doing to step into this new perspective? What are we doing to shift ourselves, not just once or twice, but to continually shift ourselves so that we can be in that new perspective, so that we can see the world? And also, of course, what we're saying is that we have to connect head and heart, which allows us to work with the world in a more holistic way. Because one of the things that's causing us such tragic problems is that we have separated the world. We have separated ourselves from the world. We are separated ourselves from each other. We've even separated ourselves from ourselves, this kind of alienation. So the trickster poet helps bring all of it back together with fresh new perspective. So the last poem is by one of my absolute favorite mentor poet. And I have many poets I love, but William Stafford has a special place in my mind and in my heart. This poem, one of his trickster poet poems for sure, and he wrote a lot of them, by the way. This is called At the Unnational Monument Along the Canadian Border. Take that title in. At the Unnational Monument Along the Canadian Border. And the poem goes like this. Excuse me. This is the field. This is the field where the battle did not happen. This is the field where the battle did not happen, where the unknown soldier did not die. Excuse me. This is the field where grass joined hands, where no monument stands, and the only heroic thing is the sky. Let's do that stanza once more. It's a short poem. This is the field where the battle did not happen, where the unknown excuse me, where the unknown soldier did not die. This is the field where grass joined hands, where no monument stands, and the only heroic thing is the sky. Birds fly here without any sound. Birds fly here without any sound, unfolding their wings across the open. No people killed or were killed on this ground, hallowed by neglect and an air so tame that people celebrate it by forgetting its name. Those last lines. No people killed or were killed on this ground, hallowed by neglect and an air so tame that people celebrate it. They celebrate it by forgetting its name, by forgetting its name. Well, I hope that the Trickster-Poet, elements of that poem are quite available to us. First of all, it just shifts the whole idea of what an unnational monument could be and how we have so many monuments dedicated to war. How about the monuments dedicated to peace? What would that look like? How many monuments do we have that are dedicated to peace, to the war that didn't happen, to the violence that didn't occur? And I think William Stafford is pointing toward that. Well, we started out by asking, can you and I and we, can all of us, can you and I and we become creative disruptors, pattern interrupters? Can we shapeshift our own selves and our own perspectives and thinking? Can we be embracers of complexity? Can we be reimaginers of relationships, reconnectors with ourselves, with others, and the great other or the earth? Can we be embracers of uncertainty and not have it bring us to our knees? Can we be users of lucky language, which is what these great poems are? Can we embrace the trickster poet and trickster poetry? And can we become the kind of human beings that can shapeshift, change our own perspectives, come back to our center? Can we be more vital? Can we step into the world in a way that has us be the most effective? As the Context Institute says, can we be in our optimal zone more often and with more consistency? And I think these poems, this coyote poet spirit, and these poems can help us. They are tools for doing all of these things. Okay, well, that's a wrap. Thank you so much for your listening ear. Thank you for being here. Thank you for referring this to others. Thank you for making a comment or liking this particular episode if you enjoyed it, if you learned something, if you felt a little bit inspired. And as I always like to say, until next time and next poems, please take good care of yourself and, if you can, someone else.